7 Sinister discoveries revealed in the haunted woods, unexplained and cursed artifacts exposed. Sarah took another deep breath, trying to shake off the gnawing fear that seemed to hang in the air like fog. Maplewood looked perfect on the outside, but shadows crept along the edges. The manicured lawns, the children laughing, none of it felt right anymore. Jake had been waking up screaming, his small body trembling with terror, relaying tales of lurking shadows outside their home. "It's just a phase," she assured herself again and again. But now, day after day, the woods called to her with an urgency that felt almost sinister. On her routine dog walk with Daisy, she felt the chill creep under her skin. The familiar trail had grown heavy, the branches clawing at her, urging her to turn back. A shimmer caught her eye near a gnarled oak tree, a fleeting light that beckoned and warned at the same time. Heart racing, she crept closer, feeling the earth twist beneath her feet. What she found there sent a cold shiver down her spine, a rusted mirror stained with dark, viscous fluid. It looked like blood or something worse. The air tightened around her, and Daisy whined, pulling away as if the very ground was tainted. "Get a grip, Sarah," she muttered, trying to shake off the unease. The mirror felt cursed in her hands, whispering secrets of the past that should remain buried. Over the next few days, her obsession deepened. Each return to the woods birthed new terrors: a family photo, the faces scratched out, a doll with hollow eyes staring, begging to tell its own tragic tale, a crumpled map littered with markers, places where children had vanished without a whisper. Panic began threading its way through her daily life. "Mom, what if Mr. Hawthorne took them?" Jake's worried eyes stared up at her one night, pleading for reassurance. It twisted something in her gut. Mr. Hawthorne was just a neighbor, a harmless eccentric, they all said, yet the hairs on her arms lifted when he glanced her way. She brushed Jake's fears aside as implausible, yet unease settled deeper, changing the very air around them. Sweat trickled down Sarah's back as the neighbor's presence weighed heavily on her shoulders. There was something beyond ordinary about him, something that felt chillingly wrong. With each bizarre encounter, the lines between fear and reality blurred. Shadows flickered past her windows after dark, and strange sounds echoed in their once safe home. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a trembling heart, Sarah felt the pressure building. She needed to confront Mr. Hawthorne, to understand what darkness loomed just outside her door, lurking in broad daylight. Just then, a harsh wind swirled around her, chilling her to the bone. Her phone buzzed ominously, revealing a message from an unknown number: "You shouldn't have gone into the woods." Terror washed over her, and she turned to Jake, voice trembling as she whispered, "Stay close." The shadows grew longer, engulfing her, and in that clamp of darkness, Sarah understood one brutal truth: what lurked but beyond the trees was far more than simple childhood fears. Secrets kept hidden but not forgotten. What had she stirred? How deep did the darkness stretch, and would they escape it alive? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah felt a tightening in her chest. It was as if the world around her was in on a secret she was not meant to know. With each step toward Mr. Hawthorne's house, the oppressive weight of silence draped heavily over her. The light from her porch flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls of her home. "Just a few questions," she repeated silently, as if that would calm the storm brewing within her mind. She approached his yard, the once quaint garden now overrun with creeping vines and thorny weeds that looked ready to snare her. Her heart pounded, echoing in her ears like a war drum. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind the curtained window of Hawthorne's house. Her breath hitched as she hesitated. Did he see her? A bead of sweat rolled down her spine. "This is ridiculous," she murmured. As irrational as it felt, she couldn't shake off the creeping feeling that she was being drawn into a web. With a sudden jolt of determination, Sarah rapped on the door, the sound echoing ominously in the thickening twilight. A shuffling noise came from inside, sending a new wave of panic crashing over her. The door creaked open, revealing Mr. Hawthorne's gaunt face, shadowed beneath the brim of a wide hat. His eyes glinted, too bright for comfort. "Why, hello there." His voice rasped like dry leaves crunching underfoot. The warmth in his tone contrasted sharply with the chill settling in the air. Hi, Mr. Hawthorne," Sarah stammered. "Can I come in for a moment?" The words barely escaped her lips, a pitiful request mingled with uncertainty. He studied her for a heartbeat longer than comfortable, his gaze piercing into her very core. "Of course," he finally said, stepping aside silently. Inside, the scent of mildew clawed at her nostrils, and the dim light made every corner feel suffocating, like being trapped in an old photograph. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with bizarre curiosities. A stuffed raven perched above her, its glassy eyes followed her every move, deepening the sense of being watched. "Nice collection," she managed, trying to lighten the mood, though her throat was dry. "Some might call it a hobby," he replied, his smile wide but uninviting. "But you're not here to discuss my collection, are you?" The walls of the small living room seemed to close in as he leaned closer, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "You're worried about the woods, aren't you?" Sarah stiffened. "Yes, my son Jake." He finished her thought, voice oozing with sinister delight. "Children are sensitive to such things. Little sponges of fear, soaking in their surroundings. What do you know?" Sarah's voice trembled, a mixture of fear and fury propelling her. "Let's just say," he leaned back, a greedy smile curling, "the woods have a hunger. And children, they taste sweet." Her stomach churned. This wasn't a conversation, it was a proclamation of evil. With each syllable he uttered, she felt a visceral understanding of what awaited them if she didn't act. Suddenly, she heard a small voice behind her. "Mom?" Jake stood in the doorway, eyes wide and terrified. Mr. Hawthorne's demeanor shifted as he turned to the boy, his playful smile morphing into something grotesque and predatory. The room felt like it was spinning. "Jake, get back!" Sarah screamed, instinctively stepping between them. But the moment hung heavy, like a pendulum tick-tocking toward a doomsday. And just then, as the air grew thick with tension, the lights flickered off completely, plunging them into darkness. Panic ensued. A loud crash echoed behind them, followed by the distant rustling of something moving closer from within the shadows. What had she awoken? The pulse of terror beat in her ears as Sarah clutched Jake's hand. Should she flee? Confront the darkness? And in that split second, a voice whispered from the depths, a chilling echo of the woods calling her name once again. The darkness swallowed them whole. Sarah strained to hear through the thick, suffocating silence, her heart hammering in her chest. Jake's small hand trembled in her grip. She could feel his tiny body vibrating with fear next to her, but there was no time to comfort him. They needed to escape. "Mr. Hawthorne?" She called out, her voice quivering. There was no reply, just the eerie stillness that surrounded them. The air felt alive, crackling with something she couldn't quite identify. Down the hall, she thought she heard a whisper, so faint it could have been her imagination, "Come closer, find out, Mom." Jake pulled at her, his voice a mere whisper. "I can't see." "I know, sweetheart, just stay close," she replied, her own fear creeping into her tone. With a shaky breath, she fumbled for her phone. The screen flickered to life, casting a dim glow in the oppressive gloom. Instinctively, she raised it to illuminate the space around them. The light revealed the clutter of the living room, a jumble of oddities strewn across every surface, each more grotesque than the last. Preserved creatures in jars, twisted figures that looked almost human. The stuffed raven, now highlighted in the fading light, seemed to leer at her, mocking her distress. "Let us go," she urged, inching backward toward the door, keeping her eyes on the now darkened figure of Mr. Hawthorne, who had vanished as if he had melted into the shadows. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled as the creeping sensation of being watched settled in. Just as she reached the threshold, her phone buzzed violently in her hand, a shocking vibration that sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. Glancing at the screen, her heart skipped a beat. A chilling message blinked across, "Don't let him take you." "What is it, Mom?" Jake whimpered, grasping onto her leg. "They're just texts," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite stretch her lips. Her finger hovered over the screen, shaking. Who could be sending her these messages? Suddenly, a loud crash jolted her from her thoughts. A towering cabinet behind her toppled over, smashing into pieces. Shards of glass glittered in the dim light, and a shadow darted through the chaos as if emerging from the ground itself. "Jake! Run!" Sarah shouted, lunging forward and grabbing his hand again, pulling him out into the cool night air that felt like a balm against her overheated fear. They stumbled into the yard, breathing heavily, the thorns from the overgrown vine scraping against her ankles. She spared a glance back at the house, the shadows within seemed to pulse as if alive. "Mom, where can we go?" Jake gasped, glancing over his shoulder. "Anywhere but here," she gritted her teeth, her instinct screeching for her to move. The woods loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, but they felt like the only option. As they dashed toward the tree line, the whispers returned like wisps of smoke wrapping around them. "You shouldn't have come. It's hungry. It sees you. What's happening?" Jake cried, urgency seeping into his tone. "I don't know," she replied, desperation clawing at her throat. "We need to find help." The moment they stepped into the shadows of the trees, a shiver ran through her. It wasn't just dark, it was suffocating, a weight pressing down against them. Then, just as she turned to reassure Jake, a shriek pierced the air, bone-chilling and raw, echoing through the trees. The woods seemed alive, pulsating around them, whispers rising like the wind-twisted voices beckoning them further in. And in that moment, Sarah felt it. The pull of ancient forces, hunger that swirled around her like a storm, and something dark watching from the depths of the trees. What if this was only the beginning? She thought, dread pooling in her stomach. What lay deeper in the woods? Would the horrors inside show them the way out or consume them whole? The night wrapped around them like a shroud, each breath Sarah took tainted with the earthy scent of decaying leaves and damp soil. The underbrush crackled beneath their feet, and every sound seemed magnified, the sharp rustling of branches overhead sounding like whispers of the damned. Jake clung to her hand, his small fingers pressing into her palm, seeking comfort even as terror pulsed through her body. "Mom, I don't like this," Jake whispered, peering into the darkness that swallowed the woods ahead of them. "Me neither," Sarah admitted, her voice barely a murmur. She had a crushing urge to run, to flee from this nightmare that loomed around them, but where would they go? The shadows danced and flickered between the trees as if alive, taunting them with a sinister promise of madness. Then the whispers intensified, swarming around them, murky voices sliding into her ears. "Come closer, you're not alone." She instinctively tightened her grip on Jake's hand and pulled him closer. "Keep walking, we need to find a way out." As they moved deeper, the path twisted and narrowed, the trees contorting into grotesque shapes, their gnarled arms reaching out like skeletal fingers. A low growl, deep and rumbling, echoed from somewhere within the thicket. Sarah's heart raced. She forced her legs to move faster, her mind racing with possibilities. What was lurking just beyond their sight? Was Mr. Hawthorne part of this wickedness? Suddenly, a shape darted from behind the trees, just on the edge of her vision. She halted, freezing in place as dread pooled in her stomach. "Jake, stay behind me," she commanded, her voice trembling slightly. "And Mom? What is it?" Jake whimpered, wide-eyed and terrified. "Shoo." She scanned the dark, feeling her pulse quicken. Fear coiled within her like a serpent. Then from the blackness, a figure emerged, a wild, ragged man with eyes that glowed an unnatural shade of white. The breath caught in her throat as he stumbled closer, his clothing tattered, skin clinging to his bones as if he'd been here for years. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, his voice a hoarse whisper, dripping with desperation. "It'll take you." Fear gnawed at her. "We just want to leave." He shook his head wildly, as though to dispel her words. "No leaving. It knows it won't let you go." Before she could respond, something rustled violently among the underbrush. A horde of shadows surged forth, chittering and screeching. Sarah's grip tightened around Jake as she turned, adrenaline surging. They couldn't just stand there, they had to move. "Run!" she screamed, and they sprinted past the man, the sound of scratching claws against bark chasing them, echoing in the night. The whispers morphed into guttural laughter, mocking, knowing, taunting. The tree line blurred with the frantic motion, the darkness thickened, twisting around them as branches clawed at their clothes. A sharp pain raced through Sarah's ankle as she stumbled, Jake nearly losing his hold on her in the chaos. "Mom! Help!" he cried out. With trembling determination, she hoisted him up, barely catching her balance as the shadows closed in, wrapping around her like a monstrous embrace. But then a clearing opened up ahead. Moonlight spilled through the canopy, illuminating what appeared to be a decaying altar, bizarre symbols carved into the stone, pulsating with an eerie glow. "What is that?" Jake gasped, his voice quaking in her ear. "I don't know," Sarah said, her heart pounding in tandem with the pulsing light. A sense of dread washed over her, pushing down her throat. What lay ahead? Was this the answer to their escape, or the deal that would seal their fate? Before she could decide, the wild man's voice echoed again, urgent and trembling. "You must choose or be consumed. The woods never forget." As the shadows shifted closer, Sarah felt the weight of the choice press down on her. Would they uncover the truth hidden within the altar or flee, carrying the burden of knowing they didn't? All at once, the whispers grew frantic, echoing through the space. "Join us, succumb, let the darkness take you." Her breath quickened, and she faced the altar, her decision hanging in the balance. Which road would she take? And would Jake follow her into the abyss? Time was slipping through her fingers like sand, and behind them, the approaching darkness loomed closer than ever. The shadows writhed closer, their tendrils swirling like smoke, whispering promises that churned in Sarah's gut. The light from the altar flickered as if it too was uncertain, casting ominous patterns on the ground. "Mom!" Jake pleaded, panic creeping into his voice. His small hands trembled against her arm, as if he could feel the darkness pulling at them. "Stay close," she whispered, trying to keep fear from her eyes. Her heart thundered, each beat a hammer strike against her ribs. She turned toward the altar, the symbols shimmering like a heartbeat. They felt alive, pulsing with a malevolent energy that gnawed at the edges of her mind. "Choose." The wild man's voice slipped through the air, a raw desperation. "Or be lost forever." Sarah's thoughts spiraled, clashing against each other. What did the altar promise? Safety? Or something worse? The trees loomed tall behind her, their branches stretching like claws, as if to pull her back into the suffocating darkness. "Mom, I'm scared." Jake's voice broke slower than her resolve. She felt the grip of his tiny hand slipping. Suddenly, an image flashed through her mind, Mr. Hawthorne's eyes, shining with hidden knowledge, his warnings threaded with dread. The stories of others who entered these woods, never to be seen again. Was this where they had ended up? Were they nothing more than remnants, echoing in this grim landscape? "Please." Jake's voice broke through the fog, his face pale, reflecting her own terror. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped toward the altar, approaching the irregular surface. The symbols appeared warped, shifting as if the stone itself breathed. A sharp chill descended as she extended her hand, hesitating just inches above the gritty surface. What if this was a trap? What potential lay beneath it? Then she heard it, a distant shriek weaving through the trees, a sound that cracked the night like glass. The laughter of shadows erupted, deep and ceaseless, feeding on their fear, surrounding them entirely. Sarah's pulse quickened, each beat drowning out any remaining reason. "Mom!" Jake yanked her sleeve, eyes wide and desperate. "What if it wants to hurt us?" "I don't know. But we can't let whatever that is take us." She fought against despair, trying to anchor herself for Jake. The altar loomed larger. Time was slipping away. "We have to make a choice." Suddenly, the symbols flared bright. The forest seemed to pause, breath held tightly in the oppressive night. She felt the weight of countless eyes watching her, the shadows darkening in anticipation. "Mom!" Jake stepped back, fear clawing at his voice. The shadows. Their black figures surged from the trees, emerging like living nightmares, their faces just beyond comprehension, twisted and contorted. The wild man's warning echoed again in her ears. She felt the pull of darkness coursing through the air, wrapping around her ankles like steel chains. "Make your choice." The wild man screamed again. He staggered backward, fear advancing across his brow as he dropped to his knees, seemingly lost amongst the shadows that grew closer. With a sudden burst of clarity amidst the chaos, Sarah took hold of Jake's trembling hand. "Step back," she commanded, and together they stepped toward the altar. She didn't know what might need to be offered, but she wouldn't let the shadows claim her child. A sickening sensation crawled through her veins, resistance pushing against the altar's pulse. What price would she pay? What would become of them, then? A voice deeper, ancient, rumbling like thunder rose from the altar. Sacrifice or embrace, one must be lost to gain. Sarah's resolve tightened. They had to decide. The shadows closed in a whirlwind of hungry madness, instinct calling out as the darkness beckoned with serpentine whispers. They could flee or fall deeper, but whichever path taken would change everything. "Mom," Jake urged softly, the light in his eyes dimming beneath the weight of looming despair, and in that instant, Sarah made her choice. She stepped forward, heart racing, adrenaline flooding her system. The world around her dimmed as she reached for the pulsating surface of the altar, but as her fingers brushed the cold stone, an eruption of light shattered the darkness, blinding her momentarily. The laughter intensified, screeching around her like sirens, pulling at her sanity. What would happen next? What awaited them in the depths of this darkness? The altar throbbed under her touch, as if sensing the weight of the decision she had just made, and the woods trembled in response. The moment Sarah's fingers connected with the altar, the world imploded into chaos. Light erupted like a supernova, temporarily blinding her, each flickering flash pulling her and Jake into a void where sound seemed to drown in thick silence. The shadows screeched almost jubilantly, swirling around them in a maddening dance, hungry for the essence of their fears. When the blinding light gave way, Sarah found herself in a different realm altogether. The forest had transformed. The trees twisted into grotesque parodies of themselves, their bark dark and slick, almost alive, oozing something black and glistening. The whispers grew bolder, coiling around her mind like ivy, feeding her dread. What just happened? Jake whimpered, his voice thin and fragile. He pressed closer against her side, trembling as he squinted at the unfamiliar surroundings. "Stay close," Sarah murmured, her throat dry and her heart racing. But as they took tentative steps forward, she felt the ground shift beneath them, a slow undulation that echoed like a heartbeat, pulsing with a life of its own. Suddenly, jagged rocks jutted from the earth like broken teeth. One sparked an urgent flash of memory, the stories of those who had come before, stories Mr. Hawthorne told with a grim conviction. Each tale carried a warning, a dark price paid to the woods. "It's just an illusion," she whispered, trying to convince herself. But the deeper they moved, the more real the nightmare felt, and her thoughts swirled dangerously near the edge of panic. "We'll find a way out." The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Shadows flickered along the rocks, shifting so close that she could almost touch them. With every heartbeat, whispers grew louder, calling her name, luring her deeper. A new dread clawed from within. What if the altar had chosen them, not just as survivors but as vessels for something more sinister? Look! Jake pointed ahead, eyes wide, and Sarah followed his gaze. There, half embedded in the ground, a shimmer pierced through the darkness. It was a relic, golden, ornate, ancient. It bore the same symbols from the altar, glowing faintly as if alive. But, what if we touch it? Jake hesitated. It's a risk we have to take, she whispered, feeling a magnetic pull toward it. We have no choice. As they approached, the whispers intensified. They twisted into words, taunting her. One must be lost to gain. With a shaky breath, Sarah reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, a chill swept through her, icy fingers wrapping around her heart. Illusions fell away like autumn leaves, revealing the terrible truth. The relic was a part of the altar, entwined with its purpose, irresistibly drawing them into its dark intense. In that instant, shadows converged faster than she could comprehend, darting towards the relic, hungry and desperate. The air crackled with dark energy. Jake clutched her tightly, his grip like a vice. "Mom! Please!" he cried. The shadows hissed, and Sarah's heart dropped when she saw the twisted faces loom closer, faces of all the lost souls claimed before her. With a desperate resolve, Sarah knew what she had to do. She placed both hands on the relic, and it burned like fire, searing pain flooding her senses. The shadows recoiled for a moment, then surged forward. Sacrifice, or embrace? The voice echoed again, louder, more demanding. Jake's terrified eyes searched hers, pleading for her not to disappear into the abyss. The moment stretched, a pivotal choice loomed. She could feel the darkness creeping, devouring everything, and if they didn't act, they might join those lost to the void below. Together! She shouted, and with that, they both clasped the relic, surrendering to the thrumming energy. A blinding flash, sharp pain radiated through them. Were they giving in to despair, or igniting the spark of resistance? In a heartbeat, they were transported to a new place, the world spinning violently. Would they find safety, or was this the beginning of something far more dreadful? What awaited them there? As the new terrain revealed itself, broken shadows writhing in the distance, Sarah felt the heavy burden of expectation. Their fate had only begun to unfold. The world around them shifted violently, blinding colors whipping by like a cyclone. Sarah's stomach churned as if caught in a wild ride with no end. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the world stabilized. They stood in a vast expanse, a twisted landscape that mirrored the darkness of their previous realm, but there was more. A stench of burnt flesh mingled with the sweet decay of something long dead. "Where are we?" Jake asked, the tremor in his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. Shadows darted at the edges of their view, grotesque figures that watched, inching closer with every heartbeat. "This must be the other side of the altar," Sarah said, scanning their surroundings. The trees here weren't just alive, they moved. Branches twisted like fingers, grasping at the air, reaching for them. Fear burrowed deeper into her chest. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, as though echoing the steady beat of an ancient heart, and with it came a chorus of whispers, an eerie chant that clawed at Sarah's sanity. Words she could barely comprehend blended together, seeping into her mind like poison. "Get away from here!" A voice from the shadows rang out, rough and worn, pulling her from her thoughts. A figure emerged, ragged but alive. It was a man with hollow eyes and skin the color of ash, each line on his face telling of suffering. "You've awakened it." "Awakened what?" Jake asked, and Sarah's heart raced at the desperation lacing his tone. "The curse of the woods." The man rasped, fear clawing at his voice. "You don't belong here. You must go before it claims you." He glanced over his shoulder, panic flickering in his eyes. The shadows stirred, pulsing as if they were alive, hungry for the souls of the living. Sarah felt her breath hitch. What do you mean it? What is cursed? He stepped closer, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. The relic you touched, it binds you to this realm. There's no way out. You've become part of the altar's game. No, no. Jake gasped, tears brimming in his eyes. We can't be stuck here. We need to go home. The man shook his head, a grim laugh escaping him. Home? This is your home now. You're nothing more than pawns in its ever-hungry grasp. Sarah stepped back, her mind racing. The weight of dread pressed down on her. We have to fight it. We can't just accept this. But the man's eyes darkened, echoing a sorrowful truth. You don't understand. To fight it means to lose oneself completely. One must be sacrificed to save the other. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them rippled again and Jake yelped as dark tendrils shot up, wrapping around his ankles. Mom! Help! He shouted, struggling against the black grasp. No! Sarah screamed, lurching forward, her heart shattering at the sight of her son in peril. She reached for him, but the shadows surged, pulling him deeper into the earth. Sacrifice! Echoed the voice again, mocking and cruel. What will you give up to save him? Jake! She lunged, fingers grazing his before the darkness yanked him down, swallowing his terrified face. A choice loomed before her: embrace the shadows or summon the strength to fight them. Desperation clawed at her throat, a sickening balance of hope and dread. Jake! She screamed, panic splitting her open. I will not let you go. In that instant, Sarah felt the echoes of the relic's pulse. She understood the power was hers too. But at what cost? A surge of energy coursed through her, the whispers now chanting her name. Sacrifice, or be forever lost. As the shadows danced around her, she struggled with the darkness inside, the grim possibility of becoming the very thing she feared. What would it take to save her son? And what if it meant facing the ultimate sacrifice? The ground pulsed with energy, tugging at her. The shadows converged, and Sarah's heart raced as she made her choice. In that breathless moment, she realized the depths of desperation she had yet to explore. Would she risk everything for the light, or would she join the endless night? Jake, hold on! She cried, her voice echoing across the chasm of shadows, desperate to reach him. But as she dove into the darkness, a chilling question lingered in her heart: who would truly be sacrificed? The darkness enveloped Sarah as she plunged into the shadows, each second stretching into an eternity. Her instincts screamed at her to stop, but her heart, a wild animal in her chest, was already racing toward a decision she might regret. Jake! She called again, the name ripping from her throat like a desperate prayer. She could feel the weight of the shadows bearing down on her, tendrils whispering fuel to her fears. Willing her limbs to move, she fought against the clawing darkness, tracing the ephemeral pull where her son had disappeared. A flash of light erupted ahead, a flickering flame on the horizon of blackness. Instinctively, she sprinted toward it, dodging the cruel grasp of the tendrils that sought to hold her back. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices, each more frantic than the last. Leave while you can. Join us in the dark. Sacrifice one, save another. Particles of dust danced in the disturbing light as she neared, forming a disorienting kaleidoscope. And then she saw him. Jake sat on the ground, desperately pulling against the roots that entwined around his frame. His eyes were wide, pleading, filled with an innocence that shattered her. Mom! Help me! She lunged forward, reaching for him, fingers grasping his wrist as she felt the frozen grip of the shadows trying to drag him down. Hold on, baby. I'm here. But instead of breaking free, something dark stirred inside her, a power she hadn't known she possessed. It pulsed through her veins, adding weight to her limbs. Images of destruction flashed in her mind, flooding her thoughts with the reality of the curse, the scary losses that might come. Sarah! Cried the man from before, his face distorted with terror as he appeared behind her, urged on by the whispers. You can't give in to it. You'll lose him forever. How do I save him? She shouted into the void, breath stealing away. The shadows coiled more tightly around her son, squeezing as Jake gasped. Sacrifice, the voices in unison chanted, slipping through her like water through fingers. You must offer your soul. A swell of despair crashed over her like an icy wave. The price was steep. To save Jake, she had to tear pieces of herself away, to throw them into the abyss. She felt Jake's pulse faint beneath her grip, and she howled, "No. You are not taking him." In that moment of defiance, the shadows recoiled, trembling at her defiance. The flickering flame ahead grew brighter, illuminating the area. Inside the glow, she could see an altar made of twisted roots and lost souls, throbbing in bond with the relic that now pulsed with her heartbeat. As it throbbed, the shadow's grip slackened for a moment. This fleeting chance ignited hopeful embers within her. "Jake, pull free!" she cried, a new resolve sprouting in her chest. But as she locked eyes with him, Jake's expression shifted from helplessness to a calm acceptance, tears spilling. "Mom, I love you," he whispered, choking on the words. "You have to let go, it's okay." Her heart shattered all over again. Could his sacrifice be the only path? "No!" screamed Sarah, frantic. She felt a wave of darkness bearing down again, pushing against her will. The crossroads flooded her mind, stay and fight or save him by sacrificing herself. The darkness whispered sweet lies, promising a chance for greater power. It was seductive, promising to feed her what she wanted most, but at what cost? Before she could approach the decision, the shadows pulled at her with more anger. The ground rumbled, the altar shuddered, its very essence threatening to burst open. And then, the relic, its glow shifting to a blinding light, suddenly shattered, splintering like glass. In that moment, a surge of energy enveloped them both, yanking them closer to the depths, the void ready to seal their fate. But in the depths of chaos, an unearthly dread clawed inside Sarah's heart. She hadn't made her choice yet. As the shadows thrashed around her, she realized with horrific clarity, sometimes, the sacrifices you dread most are those you never expected to make at all. What hidden truths would emerge from the broken relic? And what of the bond sustaining them in the heart of darkness? The ground quaked beneath her feet, as if the very earth knew the battle being fought above it. As the relic shattered, shards of blinding light scattered like fireflies in the night, painting eerie silhouettes through the darkness. Sarah's heart raced, pumping raw adrenaline into her veins, fueling her fight against the encroaching shadows. "Stay with me, Jake. Come on!" she yelled, feeling the roots tightening even more, squeezing the breath from her son. He grunted, fighting with all his might, but his strength faltered. The whispers intensified, a swirling chaos of threats and promises, each word imbued with malice. "Let go, it's what he wants, join us." The voices slithered into her mind, twisting her thoughts into a storm of confusion, but before she could succumb to despair, Sarah felt that darkness pulsing within her, an unnatural energy that grew stronger against the pain. It surged like a wave, cresting with possibilities. With renewed resolve, she clenched her jaw and pulled harder on Jake's wrist. "You will not take him. Not now, not ever." A guttural scream erupted from the shadows as they recoiled again, but the pain of its anger shot through her. She was being torn in two, caught between what she desperately wanted and what she feared to become. "Mom! Please!" Jake's voice cracked, tears mingling with the dirt on his cheeks. "I can't hold on much longer." For a split second, the shadows paused, but only to swirl around her in vicious loops. The air grew thick with desperation. It took everything she had to keep herself grounded, but just as she thought she might lose both her grip and her mind, she remembered the altar. Its twisted form was alive, trembling with a pulse of energy that mirrored her own defiance. Summoning all her strength, Sarah let go of fear. "I want to offer my soul. I'll destroy you." She hurled the words into the swirling darkness, and suddenly, the roots holding Jake captive loosened just enough for him to jerk free. But the shadows lunged, clawing at him. Panic-stricken, Sarah dove to catch him, her body colliding with the ground as she wrapped her arms around him. Like a tendril of smoke, the darkness surged, snaking toward her. It pooled around her ankles, already claiming her, dragging her towards the altar. "No!" she screamed, heart pounding. She could feel the temperature drop, a wintry chill wrapping around them, leaving her breath visible in the heavy air. She glanced at the altar. Its glow dimmed, pulsating like a dying heartbeat. When she locked eyes with Jake, her resolve hardened. "We must break it. Together?" he whispered, fear etched across his face. "Together," she promised. With a shared glance of understanding, they clutched each other's hands, the warmth of their bond radiating against the frigid darkness that sought to consume them. As the shadows writhed, feeding off their fear, they rushed toward the altar. With primal screams caught in their throats, they slammed their fists into the surface, feeling the rough bark yield slightly beneath their touch. The moment their skin made contact, a wildfire ignited around them, illuminating the abyss. The darkness hissed in pain, recoiling as if burned. The voice of the shadows rose to a terrifying crescendo, demanding, begging, a sinister plea that scraped against their minds. "No! You cannot! You are mine!" In that explosive moment, the altar shook violently, sending vibrations into Sarah's bones. She could hear echoes of terrifying histories, lost souls crying in unison, begging for release. The ground opened up beneath them, threatening to swallow them whole, as the shadows clawed to retain their power, but it was too late. The connection to the relic surged, drawing from their fear and hope, stitching together a bond stronger than the darkness. Light exploded forth, blinding, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. For the first time, she realized, the shadows weren't just after her. This was a fight for their lives. But in the heart of that explosion, as the light illuminated the depths of the abyss, a dreadful thought struck her. What if the relic's destruction unleashed something far darker? As the world tilted and the shadows screamed, she felt the very essence of her bond with Jake falter. What consequence awaited them? What true horror lurked beyond the light they had just ignited? And before they could process what was happening, a violent force propelled them backward. Sarah blinked against the radiant chaos, heart racing anew, mind reeling. Behind her, she could sense the darkness regrouping, biding its time, waiting for its moment of revenge. What had they truly unleashed? And what desperate choice would they face next? The light erupted, tearing through the darkness, revealing shadows twisting and writhing as if in agony. Sarah felt a rush of hope but also fear. What if this unleashed something worse than they had encountered before? Suddenly, the ground shook violently, fissures opening up around them to swallow the darkness. "Hold on!" she shouted to Jake, grabbing his hand tightly, desperate for their bond to withstand the chaos. As the blinding light swelled, they braced against a rush of energy that crackled in the air, buzzing around them like an electrified strand of lightning. "Mom! What's happening?" Jake's eyes were wide, reflecting the glow that surged around them, illuminating the remnants of the altar. I don't know." Her voice trembled, trying to mask the truth that rattled in her heart. They couldn't lose this chance, couldn't let the darkness regroup. In a bitter battle of wills against the chaos, she concentrated on the warmth of their shared moments. Jake's laughter ringing like music, his tiny fingers wrapped around hers on sunny days filled with innocence. She let that love burn brightly against the shadows, a weapon against despair. "Yes. Come on, Jake. We can do this," she urged, drawing strength from him as they moved together, inching closer to the heart of the altar. She felt a pulse, the shadows fighting back, pulling, clawing at their feet, desperate to drag them into the abyss. "Together!" they called in unison, their voices merging into a harmonious defiance. With one mighty push, they thrust their intensity toward the altar once more. Light filled every crevice, flooding the woods with hope, hurling shadows aside as if they were made of smoke. The darkness shrieked, echoing through the trees, a chilling cacophony that signaled its retreat. The altar shuddered violently, its energy shifting as tendrils of darkness fractured, splintering and dissipating into the night, but then, Jake gasped, falling to his knees. A shadow darted back, snaking toward him, trying to reclaim its hold on the boy. No! Sarah lunged forward, pulling him back into her embrace. You have to fight it. The dreadful whispers wrapped around them. Join us, submit, it's inevitable. With sheer determination, Sarah pushed back against the darkness. She recalled the memories that defined them, the shared smiles, the bedtime stories, their bond fortified by love, becoming armor against the horrors around them. We are light. Not darkness. She yelled defiantly. The shadows howled in protest, thrashing wildly. The remnants of the altar pulsed wildly under their touch. Mom! I don't want to be here. Jake's voice cut through her heart, raw and terrified. You won, TB, I swear. Just hold on. Together, they pressed their hands against the altar, fueling it with their combined love and hope, as the memories surged forward. The altar responded, its glow blinding, illuminating the encroaching dark. The shadows reeled, like flames licking away at an empty forest, scorched and frightened. Let it go! Sarah cried, feeling the weight of the shadows lessen. The relic's light fused with their unity, igniting something beautiful yet terrifying. We can break the curse. The shadows screeched louder, reverberating against their very essence, pleading, begging for their submission, but this was not a time for weakness. No! Sarah screamed with determination. Not today. With a final push, a brilliant flash erupted, the light exploding outward to engulf everything in their proximity. The shadows twisted and screamed, unable to withstand such purity and unity. With one final shudder, the darkness erupted into nothingness, scattering like ashes in the wind, leaving only a calm silence in its wake. The world came rushing back, the air feeling lighter. Sarah blinked against the sudden stillness, her breath coming in heavy sobs. Did we do it? Jake's voice trembled, and a rush of emotion filled her chest. Yes. We did. We're free. Tears of relief streamed down her cheeks as she pulled him close. They embraced tightly, feeling the warmth of survival wrap around them like a blanket. But just as they began to breathe again, they noticed the woods transforming. Where the darkness had once reigned, beautiful trees burst forth with vibrant colors, blossoms where shadows once crept. We need to go home, Sarah whispered, still feeling the adrenaline coursing through her. They took hesitant steps, the path before them now clear and inviting. As they walked, the whispers that had haunted them faded into echoes of the past. Finally, as they reached the edge of the woods, sunlight streamed through the trees, spilling warmth over them like a long-lost friend. Jake paused, looking back at the now transformed landscape, a faint smile breaking out on his face. Maybe we should visit the woods more often, he ventured, half joking but fully relieved. Sarah chuckled lightly, ruffling then smoothing his hair. Not for a while, buddy. Those woods could use some healing, too. They stepped into the sunlight, hearts lightening and spirits lifting. Behind them, the shadows were just a memory, a reminder of what they had survived. Freedom welcomed them back into the world, but Sarah knew they'd forever carry a piece of that light within them, a flame unquenchable, ignited in the darkest of times. And as they walked home together, the echo of the woods served as a haunting reminder, urging not only a cautious respect for the mysteries of the past but also a fierce hope for the future. Remember, love can conquer even the darkest shadows. Make sure to subscribe immediately to stay updated on more thrilling stories. Smash that like button now to support our content. Your support means everything. Don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's talk, and instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to be part of our amazing community. Let's keep the love alive.